Welcome to Revenge by Eve. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the story.
I was signing what I thought were mortgage refinance papers when I noticed the address. A house I'd never seen before, in a neighborhood I didn't recognize, with my name nowhere on the title. Before this story goes any further, tell me, would you have confronted him immediately or done what I did? And as you listen, comment where you're listening from. I read everyone. My name is Eve Carson, and for 12 years I thought I had a solid marriage. My husband Jason and I met in our mid-20s at a community fundraiser. He was charming in that easy, approachable way, not the loudest person in the room, but someone you naturally gravitated toward. He worked in commercial real estate, and I was a middle school teacher. We balanced each other. He was practical and numbers-driven. I was creative and people-focused. And we dated for 2 years before he proposed on a weekend trip to the mountains. It was simple, romantic, and exactly what I wanted. We got married the following spring in a small ceremony with close family and friends. The first few years were good. Better than good, actually. We bought a modest house in a decent neighborhood, the kind of place with sidewalks where people walked their dogs and kids rode bikes. We talked about starting a family eventually, but we weren't in a rush. We had time. Jason's career took off in his early 30s. He went from being a regular agent to managing larger commercial properties and eventually started working with development projects. The money got better, but so did the hours. Late nights became normal. Weekend work calls became routine. I didn't mind at first. I was busy with teaching, and I understood that career momentum required sacrifice. When he'd come home after 9 or 10 at night, I'd have dinner waiting. We'd talk about our days, watch something together, maintain our connection. Our routine became my comfort. Sunday morning coffee on the back porch, Friday night dinners at our favorite Italian place, monthly game nights with our couple friends, Mike and Lauren. Jason was attentive in the ways that mattered. He remembered my birthday, our anniversary, the small things I mentioned wanting. When my mother got sick, he took time off to drive me to her appointments. When I was stressed about a difficult student, he'd listen and offer perspective. I trusted him completely. The kind of trust that doesn't even question itself because there's never been a reason to. Our sex life was comfortable. Not passionate like the early days, but steady, familiar. We knew each other's bodies, preferences, rhythms. It felt like the natural evolution of a long-term relationship. When we celebrated our 10th anniversary, Jason planned a surprise trip to Napa Valley. We spent 4 days wine tasting, eating incredible food, talking about the future. He held my hand across dinner tables and told me he loved me more than the day we got married. I believed him. Looking back now, I can see that was the last time everything felt completely real. The first warning sign was so subtle I almost missed it entirely. Jason started password protecting his phone, not with the simple 4-digit code he'd always used, the one I knew because we'd never had secrets, but with a complex alphanumeric password that he'd shield with his body when entering. When I mentioned it casually, he shrugged. Work security requirements. We handle sensitive property data now. They're making everyone upgrade their security. It made sense. I didn't push. Then came the changes in schedule. Jason had always worked late occasionally, but it became constant. 3-4 nights a week he'd text around 6 saying he was stuck in meetings or showing properties to investors. I'm sorry, babe. This deal is massive. Once it closes, things will calm down. But things never calmed down. There was always another deal, another meeting, another crisis that required his immediate attention. I started eating dinner alone most nights. I'd make enough for 2 out of habit, then pack his portion into containers that would sit in the fridge until they went bad because he'd grab takeout on the way home. You didn't have to wait up, he'd say, finding me on the couch with a book. I wanted to see you. I know, I'm sorry, this is just temporary. Temporary stretched into months. Our Friday night dinners started getting cancelled. Sunday morning coffee became him working in his home office with the door closed. Game nights with Mike and Lauren faded away because Jason was always too tired or too busy. I tried to be understanding. His career was important. We'd always said we'd support each other's professional goals, but I started to feel like I was living alone. Sex became infrequent. Once a week, then once every 2 weeks, then once a month if I initiated. Jason was always tired, always stressed, always distracted. "I'm sorry," he'd say when I tried to talk about it. "Work has been insane. I'm just exhausted." I told myself it was normal. Long-term relationships went through phases. This was just a rough patch. But then came the secretive phone calls. Jason would step outside to take calls, even in winter. He'd walk to the other end of the house when his phone rang. I'd hear him talking in low tones, sometimes laughing in a way I hadn't heard in months. "Who was that?" I'd ask when he came back inside. "Client, investor, someone from the office." Always vague, always dismissive. I started noticing charges on our credit card statement that didn't make sense. Expensive restaurants I'd never been to. Florist purchases when I hadn't received flowers. Hotel bookings in our own city. When I asked about them, Jason had explanations. Client dinner. You know how these investors are. They expect to be wined and dined. Flowers for a property staging. The staging company bills separately. Conference hotel. The firm books rooms downtown for late meetings so people don't have to drive home after. Every answer was reasonable, plausible, but together they formed a pattern I was desperately trying not to see. I started feeling crazy, like I was manufacturing problems where there were none. Jason hadn't done anything objectively wrong. He was just busy, stressed, going through a demanding period at work, except something felt off. A wife knows. Some instinct deeper than logic was screaming that something was wrong. But I didn't want to be that wife. The suspicious one, the insecure one who couldn't handle her husband's success. So I stayed quiet. The escalation began when Jason started disappearing on weekends. "I need to show this property on Saturday," he'd say Friday night. Or "big investor flying in from out of town. It's the only time he's available." I'd spend Saturday alone, cleaning a house that was already clean, grading papers, texting friends who were busy with their own families. Jason would come home after dark, claiming the showing had led to drinks, which had led to dinner, which had led to more discussions about the deal. "Did it go well?" I'd ask. "Yeah, I think we're close to closing." But the deals never seemed to close. There was always another complication, another negotiation, another weekend showing. I started suggesting we do things together. "Let's go away for the weekend, just us. Remember how much fun we had in Napa?" "I'd love that, but this isn't a good time. Let me get through this current project, and we'll plan something." The project was never done. "Let's at least have dinner together. I'll come meet you downtown after work." "Babe, I'm covered in work. I'll just grab something quick and keep grinding." I was being erased from his life in slow motion. Our friends started noticing. Lauren pulled me aside at a birthday party Jason had skipped. "Is everything okay with you two?" "Yeah, he's just really busy with work." "Eve, he's been busy with work for almost a year. When was the last time you guys did something together?" I couldn't remember. "Have you talked to him about it?" "He says it's temporary." Lauren gave me a look I didn't want to interpret. Pity mixed with concern, like she knew something I didn't. I started questioning everything. Was I being too needy, too demanding? Was I failing as a wife by not being more supportive during his career surge? I tried harder. I stopped complaining about the late nights. I made his favorite meals even though he rarely ate them. I sent encouraging texts during the day. I went to bed without asking what time he'd be home. I became smaller and smaller, trying to be the perfect wife who didn't require anything. And Jason seemed relieved by my silence. The core betrayal happened on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I'd come home from school to find a FedEx envelope on the doorstep. It was addressed to both of us, from our mortgage lender. Inside were refinance papers. Jason had mentioned refinancing a few weeks earlier, something about getting a better interest rate now that his income had increased significantly. I'd been happy to sign. We were partners. What was his was mine. I flipped through the documents, skimming the legal language. Looking for the signature lines. That's when I saw the property address. 4247 Riverside Drive, Unit 304. I stared at it, confused. That wasn't our address. We lived on Maple Street. I checked the document again. This wasn't a refinance of our home. This was a purchase agreement for a condominium. A downtown condominium. My heart started racing. I grabbed my laptop and looked up the address. It was a luxury building in the Arts District, high-end finishes, floor-to-ceiling windows, concierge service. The unit started at $800,000. I pulled up the property listing. A 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo with a balcony overlooking the river, hardwood floors, gourmet kitchen, walk-in closets. Recent sale, 4,247 Riverside Drive, Unit 304. Sold 3 months ago for $875,000. 3 months ago. Jason had bought a condo 3 months ago and never mentioned it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. I logged into our bank accounts, the joint ones we'd always shared access to. There was a new account, one I'd never seen before, in Jason's name only. I couldn't access it, but I could see it existed. I went back to the refinance documents, looked more carefully this time. The loan was in Jason's name only, not joint. The down payment had come from an account I didn't have access to, and the mortgage payment, over $4,000 a month, was being paid from that same hidden account. My vision started to blur. I tried to think of legitimate reasons. Maybe it was an investment property. Maybe he was planning to flip it. Maybe he'd wanted to surprise me. But you don't secretly buy an $875,000 condo as a surprise. I grabbed my phone and called Jason. "Hey babe, what's up?" He sounded distracted. "Busy. I need you to come home." "I'm in the middle of..." "Now, Jason, I need you to come home right now." Something in my voice must have registered because he went quiet. "Okay, I'll be there in 20 minutes. I sat at the kitchen table with the documents spread in front of me, and I waited. The 20 minutes felt like hours. When Jason walked in, he saw the papers immediately. His face went white. "Eve, what is this?" "I can explain. What is 4247 Riverside Drive, Unit 304? He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the papers like they'd betrayed him. It's complicated. Try me. It's a property investment. For work. Some of the clients I deal with need places to stay when they're in town. And I thought, don't lie to me. My voice was eerily calm. This isn't a business investment. This is a residential property with your name on it. Just your name. Bought with money from an account I didn't know existed. He ran his hand through his hair. A tell. He always did that when he was cornered. Okay. Yes. I bought a condo. Why? I needed space to work, to think. The commute was killing me, and having a place downtown just made sense. Who lives there with you? The question hung in the air. Jason's face crumbled, not with guilt, with annoyance, like I'd ruined something by figuring it out. Her name is Melissa. The room tilted. How long? Eve, please. How long have you been sleeping with her? A year, maybe a little more. A year. While I'd been making dinners he didn't eat. While I'd been sleeping alone. While I'd been questioning myself for feeling like something was wrong. Do you love her? He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. I don't know. Maybe. It's different with her. Different how? She understands the pressure I'm under, the career stuff. She works in real estate too, so she gets it. And I don't. You're a teacher, Eve. You work 8 to 3. You have summers off. You don't understand what it's like to be building something significant. The casual cruelty of that statement, the dismissal of my entire career, my entire life, hit me like a physical blow. So you bought her a condo? It's not like that. What's it like then? Explain to me what it's like to secretly spend nearly $1 million on a home for your mistress while your wife thinks you're working late. I was going to tell you. When? When were you going to tell me? Before or after you asked for a divorce? He looked away, couldn't meet my eyes, and that's when I knew. He'd already decided. He just hadn't figured out how to tell me yet. I stood up, surprisingly steady, despite the devastation coursing through me. Get out. Eve, we should talk about this. Get out of my house. It's my house too. Then I'll leave. I grabbed my purse and keys and walked out the door, leaving him standing in the kitchen with the evidence of his betrayal spread across the table. I got in my car and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. And somewhere between our house and the highway, I started screaming. Years of being diminished and dismissed and erased came pouring out of me in a sound I didn't recognize as my own. I drove to a hotel and checked in. Paid cash. He turned off my phone, and I sat in that anonymous room and let myself fall apart. That was the moment I stopped waiting for them to change. I stayed in that hotel for 3 days. I called in sick to work, something I never did. And I just existed in that space between the life I'd had and the life I was about to have. I cried until I had no tears left. I replayed every moment of the past year, seeing it all clearly now. The late nights, the secret phone calls, the way he'd stopped touching me, stopped seeing me. And then, on the 3rd day, something shifted. I stopped crying, I got angry. Not hot, explosive anger. Cold, calculated fury. Jason thought he could erase me, rewrite our marriage like I was an obstacle to his new life. Buy a love nest for his mistress while I taught middle school and made dinners he didn't eat. But he'd made mistakes, and I was going to use every single one of them. I turned on my phone. 57 missed calls from Jason, 32 text messages ranging from apologies to anger to demands that I come home so we could talk like adults. I ignored all of them. Instead, I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. The best divorce attorney in the city. A woman named Patricia Chen, who had a reputation for being ruthless and brilliant. I need to see you as soon as possible, I said when her assistant answered. What's this regarding? My husband bought a condo for his mistress using money I didn't know he had. I want everything he owns. There was a pause. Then, Patricia can see you tomorrow at 9. I showed up at Patricia's office with every financial document I could access. Bank statements, credit card records, tax returns, the refinance documents for the secret condo. Patricia was in her 50s, impeccably dressed, with eyes that saw everything. She reviewed my documents for 30 minutes without speaking. Finally, she looked up. Do you want to save this marriage? No. Good. Because if you did, I'd recommend someone else. I don't do reconciliation. I do scorched earth. That's exactly what I want. Then here's what we're going to do. Patricia laid out a plan that was surgical in its precision. First, we were going to document everything. Jason's secret accounts, the condo purchase, every dinner charge and hotel booking. We'd build a timeline showing deception and misuse of marital funds. In this state, anything acquired during the marriage is community property. That includes the condo, even though it's in his name only. He used separate funds. Doesn't matter. If he earned that money during your marriage, it's marital property, which means you're entitled to half of everything, including the love nest. I felt a grim satisfaction at that. Second, we were going to freeze our joint accounts. Patricia filed an emergency motion preventing Jason from moving or spending any marital assets without court approval. He won't be able to drain the accounts before the divorce is finalized. Third, we were going to depose Melissa, get her on record about the affair, about the condo, about everything Jason had given her. If he spent significant marital funds on her, and based on these documents he did, that's dissipation of assets. The court will make him reimburse the marital estate. I learned that Jason had been much stupider than he'd thought he was being clever. Every dinner at expensive restaurants had been charged to our joint credit card, every flower delivery, every weekend at the condo when he'd claimed to be showing properties. He'd created a paper trail of his betrayal, and Patricia was going to use every receipt. But I wanted more than just financial justice. I wanted him to feel what I'd felt. The humiliation, the betrayal, the public exposure of private pain. And Patricia had an idea for that too. The plan was simple, but it required patience. I moved back into our house. Jason was living at the condo full-time now, which meant I had complete access to everything he'd left behind. I went through his home office methodically. Files, documents, the old computers. I found emails going back 2 years, flirtatious messages that escalated into explicit ones, discussions about buying the condo, plans for a future that erased me completely. I forwarded everything to myself, created backups, built a comprehensive archive of his affair. I also discovered that Melissa wasn't just his mistress, she was his business partner. They'd started a property development company together, Carson and Associates. Using that company, they'd been flipping properties and pocketing profits that should have been marital assets. Patricia's eyes lit up when I showed her. This is better than I hoped. If he was hiding business income, that's fraud. And it means the marital estate is worth significantly more than he's disclosed. We subpoenaed business records, bank accounts, property transfers. Jason's lawyer started panicking. They filed motions to dismiss, to delay, to seal records. Patricia crushed every single one. Meanwhile, I played the part of the grieving wife. I showed up to parent-teacher conferences. I had coffee with Lauren and let her think I was devastated and broken. And I was devastated. But I was also calculating. Jason tried to reach out a few times, calls that I didn't answer, an email asking if we could talk about dividing things fairly. I forwarded the email to Patricia without responding. "He's getting nervous," she said. "Good." 2 months after I'd discovered the condo, we had our first court date, a preliminary hearing about temporary support and asset division. Jason showed up with his lawyer looking confident. He thought this would be routine. Thought he could charm his way through it or negotiate some settlement. Patricia eviscerated him. She presented the evidence of the affair, the secret accounts, the hidden business. She showed the judge receipts for $47,000 in marital funds spent on Melissa over 18 months. The judge was not amused. "Mr. Carson, you purchased a residential property using marital funds without your wife's knowledge. Your Honor, I can explain." "Please do." Jason stumbled through an explanation about investment properties and business expenses. The judge cut him off. "This is a residence where you're cohabitating with your paramour. That's not a business expense. That's dissipation of marital assets." She ordered Jason to pay me temporary spousal support, $6,000 a month. She also ordered him to reimburse the marital estate $47,000 plus interest for the money spent on Melissa. And she awarded me exclusive use of our marital home pending the final divorce. Jason's face went purple. He started to argue, and his lawyer physically restrained him. I sat quietly, hands folded, and watched him unravel. The payoff came 3 months later at the final divorce hearing. Patricia and I had built an airtight case. We had forensic accountants who'd traced every dollar. We had evidence of hidden income, dissipated assets, and fraud. Jason's lawyer tried to negotiate a settlement, but I refused. "I want this on record," I told Patricia. "I want it public." The hearing took 2 full days. Patricia called Melissa to the stand, watching her squirm under oath as she admitted to the affair, to accepting gifts bought with my money, to helping Jason hide assets. That was satisfying in a way I can't fully describe. She kept looking at Jason like he was supposed to save her. He just stared at the table. We also called Jason's business partner from his legitimate real estate job. Under oath, he testified that Jason had been using company resources for personal business, that he'd been falsifying reports and skimming commissions. By the end of day 2, Jason looked like a different person, smaller, defeated. The judge took 1 day to review everything and issue her ruling. I got the house. I got half of all assets, including the secret accounts. I got half the value of the condo, which meant Jason had to either buy me out or sell it. And since he couldn't afford to buy me out, it had to be sold. The business he'd built with Melissa had to be dissolved and the assets split. I got 3 years of spousal support, and the judge ordered him to pay my legal fees, all $83,000 of them. But the real consequence came from elsewhere. During the hearing, evidence had come out about Jason's business misconduct, His real estate firm launched an internal investigation. They fired him 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized. Melissa left him shortly after that. Turns out she'd been in it for the money and the lifestyle, and a disgraced broke ex-husband wasn't part of her plan. Jason lost everything: his career, his business, his relationship, his money. And I got to rebuild my life on my terms. The aftermath was messy in some ways, clean in others. I sold the house, too many memories, and I wanted a fresh start. I bought a small bungalow across town, something that was entirely mine. I took a sabbatical from teaching and spent 6 months traveling. Places I'd always wanted to see but Jason had never been interested in. Italy, Greece, Thailand. I learned how to be alone without being lonely. Lauren remained my friend. She admitted she'd suspected the affair for months but hadn't known how to tell me. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said. Keeping the truth from me hurt more. We rebuilt our friendship on honesty. I started dating again eventually. Nothing serious, just remembering what it felt like to be desired, to be pursued, to be chosen. I also went back to school, got a master's degree in educational administration, became a principal, built a career that was respected and valued. And I learned to trust myself again. To trust that voice that had been screaming something was wrong, to never again make myself smaller for someone else's comfort. 5 years later, I'm 43 years old and genuinely happy. I have a career I love, a home that's mine, friends who value me, and a life built on truth rather than convenience. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Jason struggled for years. He had to take a job selling residential real estate, a massive step down from where he'd been. He moved to a different city to escape the reputation he'd built. Last I heard, he was married again, to someone who apparently doesn't know about his history. I don't wish him ill, but I don't wish him well either. I just don't think about him much at all. The betrayal was devastating. It broke something in me that took years to repair. But it also freed me from a marriage where I was diminishing myself to accommodate someone who didn't value what I brought. I learned that revenge isn't always loud or explosive. Sometimes it's quiet and methodical. Sometimes it's simply refusing to let someone rewrite history to make themselves the hero. Jason thought he could erase me from his life, replace me with someone who fit his new image of success. Instead, I erased him from my future and built something better. And that's the best revenge of all. If you were in my place, what would you have done differently? And don't forget to tell me, where are you listening from right now? This is Revenge by Eve, and your voice matters here.
Thanks for watching Revenge by Eve. Until next time, relax and see you soon.